do exactly as I say, and I promise this will be over before the night is out.
In 2003, Chicago Tribune reviewer Levi Buchanan wrote the following: "Manhunt is easily the most violent video game ever made. But Manhunt is also the Clockwork Orange of video games, holding your eyes open so as to not miss a single splatter, asking you, is this really what you enjoy watching?" Had Manhunt been poorly made, using the snuff film angle as a cheap gimmick, the game would have been shameful and exploitative. What elevates Manhunt to a grotesque, chilling work of art is both presentation and gameplay. If Manhunt succeeds at retail, it will say more about America's fascination with violence than any political discourse or social debate. That makes Manhunt the most important video game in the last 5 years. Video games have been dubbed murder simulators by outraged pearl clutchers for decades, but this was the game that reactionaries said was coming. But unlike most violent games designed to shock and outrage and that's about it, Manhunt was actually good. It's not perfect, and we'll talk about why, but this was an experience only a video game could provide. Stealth gaming in the early 2000s was popularized by the likes of Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 or Splinter Cell, where your primary job is to stay out of sight while you foil a terrorist plot. There are boss battles and some encounters where you have a stand-up fight, but the game rewarded you for slipping through entire zones undetected by your enemies. The first 2 Hitman games had released by now, and those obviously require you to murder, but you received the highest rewards for only killing your designated target. Any additional casualties required cleaner costs, which deducted from your final score. Tenchu had you grappling through the dark quietly to reach your designated target unnoticed. But the game never penalized you for killing anyone besides innocent townsfolk, so you could cut a bloody trail through the whole level. It featured a visibility meter to show you how close your enemies were and how likely they were to spot you. Thief the Dark Project and its sequel used not only your visibility to draw enemies to you, but also focused heavily on sound. You could not only be seen, but heard.
Someone behind me?
And sometimes you could use that to your advantage to distract guards or set up an ambush.
Can't hear it anymore. Probably nothing.
But both games reward you for staying silent and completing your objectives without anyone knowing you were ever there. However, while these stealth adventures were successful in the early 2000s, another style of experience was changing the gaming industry, led by a developer quickly becoming a household name. The early 2000s were the golden age of Rockstar Games, when some of their now well-known franchises officially launched, seemingly to test out new features they were planning for the next GTA. Developed by Rockstar North and published by Rockstar Games, who were both no strangers to being accused of causing the downfall of society, Manhunt made some in the studio question what they were making. Former Rockstar Games web producer Jeff Williams told GamesRadar in 2007, "It may sound surprising, but there was almost a mutiny at the company over that game. With GTA, we always had the excuse that the gameplay was untethered. You never had to hurt anybody that wasn't a bad guy in one of the missions. The game was parody anyway, so lighten up." Manhunt, though, just made us all feel icky. It was all about the violence, and it was realistic violence. We all knew there was no way we could explain away that game. There was no way to rationalize it. We were crossing a line.
I can't trust anyone, least of all the police, and time's running out. I've got to get the one piece of evidence that will expose Starkweather without a shadow of a doubt. Footage and testimony of a man who was executed by the state 5 hours ago.
You play as death row inmate James Earl Cash. We open with a reporter detailing the events of your sentencing, and watch as you are executed by lethal injection. You wake up the following night.
Hey, tough guy, wake up. You're not dead. Well, not yet, anyway. Hey, get a grip and calm down. Pick up the ears. That's better. Now only you can hear me. And that's the way you're gonna want it, because I'm your only way out of here.
The voice in your ear belongs to the director, voiced by Brian Cox, who's currently starring in Succession, and is best known for...
These boys get that syrup in them, they get a little antsy in their pantsy.
Okay, that too, but also for being the first to play Hannibal Lecter in the original adaptation of Manhunter, which is not a sequel to Manhunt. It's the prequel to Silence of the Lambs, where the role was taken over by Anthony Hopkins. Tonight, the director will be shooting his new film.
Okay, are you ready? Camera, action.
Starring you. The director has placed you in the streets of a decaying Midwestern city and hired local gangs to take you down, placing a lucrative bounty on your head. Your job is to sneak through the shadows,
Snuff him out.
hunt the gang members, and brutally murder them for the cameras placed on every corner. Make it through the night and win back your freedom. Manhunt the game was a series of courses traveling through various backdrops of urban decay. From alleys to junkyards to dilapidated shopping centers, graveyards, and hey, a zoo. You travel from point A to point B, being hunted by goons who don't know you have the director in your ear helping you along, coaching you into creating new footage for his snuff films.
Oh my God! I've had an accident. I'm serious, man. You brought me off.
You complete an execution by following behind an unsuspecting target for 1 to 5 seconds, and the marker on their head turns from white to yellow to red. The longer you hold before pouncing, the more gnarly the kill animation. You could fight your enemies out in the open, but in a stand-up fight, you're just as mortal as everyone else. You'll probably win, but you'll lose about 60% of your health in the process. If your enemy has a friend nearby, you likely won't survive a 2v1 fight. So to stay alive, you'll have to stick to the shadows, lure your enemies into traps, and pick them off one by one. And this game of hide and seek is where Manhunt excels.
Do it!
In every zone, you are woefully outnumbered, but as long as no one sees you slip into the shadows, you're invisible. So you own more information than your opponents. And Manhunt delights in creating a killer in the shadow simulator for players. And if you remain undetected, you are the apex predator. If you're spotted, you enter a fail state where your enemies know your location and have greater numbers.
You're at it again! Chase me, just like a teenage girl!
So your only hope to survive is to run, and lose them in the darkness before striking again. But staying in the shadows is only half your strategy. Sound plays a huge role in Manhunt. Your weapons are sorted by color based on the amount of noise they make. Green weapons are near silent, but they break after one use. Blue weapons might alert somebody nearby when you strike, and using red weapons will draw attention you don't want.
And you have to remember, this was back in 2003 when... Oh, Jesus!
As you progress through this nightmare, challenges escalate as your weapons get louder and the levels tighter. You go from the tutorial gang, the Hoods, who have... hoods...
Gotta stop smoking!
to the neo-Nazi Skins, be very, very quiet. I'm hunting Oasis. The military fanatic War Dogs,
CYA, boys! He's trying to lure us into a kill zone!
the well-armed but unstable Innocents,
I think we found our little plaything!
and finally the Smileys in the Asylum, who are out of their minds but somehow still incredible sharpshooters.
Oh, no, not my head juice. Yours! Your head juice!
To make you feel better about doing all this population control, Rockstar wrote some of the most sinister NPC dialogue I have ever heard.
He's gone. Like a child's innocence.
Oh yeah! Harder, man! Harder! I've had it with these bum hunts. Can't we just lay some traps out around the soup kitchens?
I hope that you've got green eyes so I can finish my collection.
We got your wife back at the precinct in a room full of horny cops.
I'm gonna show you some puppies. Nice little puppies!
This game almost makes you feel like you're doing a public service.
Deep down, I'm pretty sure they'd appreciate a lot of my work.
And then you work your way to the gun levels. Ugh. This was 6 years before there were relatively set standards for cover shooters, and Manhunt was not prepared to perfect both stealth and third-person action. So these gauntlets of gore quickly devolve into high-caliber whack-a-mole.
What can I say? You are a good leading man. The audience will love you. Don't expect any royalty checks where you're going.
In the game's final chapters, you break free of the director's control, and the War Dogs trap you in an abandoned apartment block.
You like hide and seek? You like hide and fucking seek? Well, we're coming for you, asshole. Ready or not. It's our turn now. Run! Run!
But after tearing them to shreds, the ambitious young reporter from the opening scene comes to your rescue. She tells you the director is Lionel Starkweather, a former Hollywood filmmaker who left the business in disgrace and now makes films for the snuff ring from his mansion. With the help of the chief of police, you're given a mix of melee and ranged weapons now, so you take the reporter and blast your way through the Carter City Police to recover the evidence she has stashed in her apartment. And you two separate so you can head to the mansion and hunt down Starkweather yourself. While the game gameplay loop is similar level by level. There are some standout set pieces, like the cranes in Fueled by Hate, the White Rabbit, the ominous flashlights in the tunnels during Wrong Side of the Tracks, this train yard level that can go straight to hell, and of course your fight with Pigsy. Other than a few one-on-one fights early on, there's not many boss fights in Manhunt until you meet Pigsy, a naked pigman with a chainsaw that Starkweather keeps locked away in his attic. In the final sequence, he's broken free, and you and Pigsy go on 2 separate rampages through the mansion, dividing Starkweather's guards, sometimes literally, and giving you an opening to strike. But this place is only big enough for one of you. Manhunt never rubs the player's nose in their own actions like Spec Ops: The Line or Hotline Miami. When you finish a scene, you're given a star rating. 1 star for completing the level quickly, 1 for playing on hard mode, and the rest are literally for style. Except for one section where you're forced to deliver the bloodier kills. You can just go for the quickest executions and play it safe. It's the easiest strategy, and nothing is stopping you from doing it.
If you don't want to play anymore, I can just tell them where you are.
But Starkweather and the game consistently encourage you to do more, to get into the muck and enjoy it. And over time, your curiosity probably will get the better of you.
Hold up, Cash. You and your family weren't exactly close, am I right? It's just that I thought it would be nice to have a surprise reunion. Each time they spot you, these war dogs are going to execute one of your beloved family.
Rockstar North never tries to humanize Cash, and that's fine. We feel for his family when they're strung up in the zoo for Cash to rescue.
Don't stop until you're out of here.
And a little bad for Cash when he finds out that any family who survived were slaughtered for footage. But the game never tries to justify what Cash is doing. He's killing for his own survival. Like the player, he's choosing to proceed. And sometimes a protagonist making a series of interesting choices can be more compelling than a likable one. Oh, we will talk about you later this year, Aiden. Besides, I don't know where you'd start trying to make a mass murderer friendly.
What? You asked for it.
So what set Manhunt apart even from other stealth games in 2003? It's more like a stealth horror experience, influenced by stealth games and survival horror games where resources are scarce, you can't take much damage, and everything wants you dead. First, your primary objective is to eliminate all of your enemies quietly. You rarely have other objectives to complete. You are not here to steal a treasure or save the world. And you almost always can't advance until everyone in the area is dead. Killing is the core gameplay loop. You cannot play as a pacifist, but you are vulnerable. Stealthing through a section undetected is not an option. You're there to take down enemies, but you are just as fragile as they are. Enemy groups have escalating tactics. This isn't unique to Manhunt, of course, but the groups hunting you will get smarter as the game progresses, working in teams and refusing to separate or using new strategies against you. Takedowns are brutal. You don't have the option to be gentle. This is where the horror happens.
We haven't got all night. Get out there and start killing!
Because so much of the gameplay is spent sitting silently in the dark, something has to fill that void. So Starkweather becomes your own personal GLaDOS.
You're doing very well.
Critiquing your every kill and praising you for your more gruesome takedowns.
You're showing me some real psycho style, Cash. I love it.
Karcher City feels all but abandoned. There is no law here, and when the cops do show up, the chief of police is working for Starkweather. There is no hope of rescue or alternative for Cash. He'll have to play the director's game to survive.
It's a manhunt, and they won't stop until we're both dead.
Manhunt 2 released 4 years later in 2007 with no connection to the original game other than the title and the violence.
We did it.
Rockstar attempted to tell a deeper psychological thriller story, but their middle fingers in all directions writing style didn't match the tone at all.
I don't want to hurt anybody.
If he sees you, he will kill you, understand? Waste him.
But he's a nurse. He'll help me. This is insane.
Go on, try it. See how it feels to own a life.
One of the biggest missteps was trying to humanize Daniel and give him excuses for committing such heinous acts of violence, but still depict him as sympathetic, and the story here was not up to the task. Cranking up the gore for the sequel came at a price. Manhunt 2 received an adults-only rating in the US, one of the only games by a major publisher to do so, preventing the game from being released on consoles or sold by major retailers until it was heavily censored. And like Manhunt 1, it was outright banned in several countries. countries. While that did gain it some momentary notoriety, the game's quality did not match the first, and the sales were dead on arrival. While I'm sure there are used copies floating around, at the time I record this, there is no legal way to acquire a new copy of Manhunt 2, even on Rockstar's own launcher. There will likely never be a Manhunt 3. Rockstar found the point where the game became too graphic to monetize, and their audience's anemic reaction to Part 2 revealed the team had forgotten what made the first game work.
Cousin, it's so good to see you.
They went on to develop Grand Theft Auto 4 and later 5, Red Dead Redemption, and Red Dead Redemption 2, doubling down on their trademark huge open worlds filled with microtransactions. And so, going out with a whimper, this would be the last the world would ever see of Manhunt. Or was it? Manhunt itself never saw another sequel, but the tense design of its stealth encounters would inspire other developers to carry on its legacy, including one of the biggest surprise hits of 2009, starring the last fictional character you would ever think to take up the mantle of James Earl Cash.
I think he's talking about you, Babs.
Predator was one of, if I remember well, Predator was one of those things that we had sorted right from the start.
Really, it just felt
pretty
right.
quickly felt right, and it's very Batman. It's like Bruce Wayne dressed up as a bad to strike fear in the heart of the villain of Gotham City, right? So our stealth section, what we wanted was you as Batman you were the predator, they were prey, and you would never have be feeling chased or hunt. You were the hunter. You were the one to make them feel.
Arkham Asylum really made you feel like playing the rest of the series because they're all great. Aside from proving that yes, you can make a great Batman video game despite all the evidence to the contrary, Rocksteady Games took a core tenet of the Batman mythos and built their game around it: fear. However, as critics raved about that experience, a certain other title kept popping up to compare it to, and not just because both games feature a sprawling asylum. Looking at Asylum's design, the game has 3 modes of play: exploration, combat, and stealth. In open melee combat, Batman's just a hurricane of fists. But in the Predator sequences, you're locked in a room with Joker's thugs, and they all have guns. You may be terrifying, but you're not immortal. And if you're spotted, a few shots will kill you. So you need to stay out of sight, carefully taking out Joker's goons one by one without being spotted by the others. And these puzzle box encounters where you have to distract, subdue, and intimidate are straight out of Manhunt. So I guess we've established that Batman and Cash are pretty similar when you think about—
I will never kill.
Not even you. I can get out of this. Let's look at the list. How does Arkham Asylum compare to Manhunt? Your primary objective is to eliminate all enemies quietly? In those Predator sections? Yes. Your ultimate objective is to stop the Joker.
I'll give you this one for free. Knock me off, I dare you. End this. Pull the plug. Stop me once and for all.
But you can't leave most encounters without taking out every goon in the room. You could fight them in the open, but if there's even one other enemy around, you're gonna end up plugged full of holes.
I salute my fallen enemy.
Other than a few large open areas, you cannot slip past your enemies in stealth. And while you may be an unstoppable force in open combat, you can still be killed by guns. So you have to stay in the shadows until it's time to strike. As the game continues, your opponents have collars on them to inform them when someone's been knocked out. Bombs are set on the gargoyles that you've been using for safety, and the goons start working in pairs to avoid being jumped from behind. Takedowns are brutal. So DC insisted during development on enemy heartbeats being present in detective mode, as proof that Batman didn't kill his enemies. As if that guy isn't paralyzed.
Hey, Bats. I know you can hear me. I want you to hurt these guys. They're nothing to me.
Let's be honest, you play as Batman, but the Joker is the star of the game. He's not as sinister as Starkweather, but Joker is a known quantity to Batman fans. We know these two are diametrically opposed, and we know which one is right and which one is wrong. We know he's insane. We know he's on the wrong side of the argument. Unlike Manhunt, there's no chance the Joker might really take down Batman this time.
Look at me. I'm amazing.
We're talking about Asylum, forget about Night for now. So he's certainly omniscient, but he's less likely to get under our skin. It's Arkham Asylum. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, and it absolutely is. You're cut off from everything in Gotham that can help you, forced to fight your way through everyone you locked up to fight the Joker, who is one step ahead of you at every moment while he watches you through all the cameras.
Oh, look who it is. Are your pointy ears burning?
So I guess the future of stealth games is kinder, gentler, PG-13. Oh God! The Last of Us 2 was widely hailed as a success by the entire internet with no controversy whatsoever, so it's easy to overlook how well the game implemented stealth. Like Arkham Asylum, the game features 3 modes of play: exploration, combat, and stealth. And no matter what side you took with the game's story, the stealth gameplay earned generally high praise for tense encounters, escalating enemy tactics, and brutal kills. So much so that a curious pattern started showing up in the online discourse about the game. Many comparisons were due to the games both having gratuitous violence, which they definitely do. But are there more similarities under the hood? Does The Last of Us 2's design take after Manhunt?
He's fucking dead! There's someone here. Sweep this whole fucking place!
Usually, yes, there are some larger areas you can sneak through undetected, but there are stealth arenas that you can't progress through until you've killed everyone in the room, loud or quiet. And you rarely have other objectives in those rooms other than to slay or flee.
Can you get through? All right, I got you. Shit, infected. Stay low.
Because much of this game takes place during the day, Ellie uses the overgrown grass that's slowly eating Seattle to hide in. As long as no one gets too close, she can scout her opponents and pick her next targets.
Please. You don't have to do this.
Mostly true, other than those areas that you can slip through. Ellie can handle herself in a fight, and the scrappy combat from the first game is better than ever. But when the wolves team up on you, sometimes your best bet is to run and hide. Absolutely. Comfortable killing humans? Bam, here's some dogs, you monster. Like Arkham and Manhunt, the NPCs are either idly chatting when they don't know that you're there, or yelling to each other when they do. And then you meet the scars. The scars communicate through whistling in their encounters, so unlike other fights, you don't know what they know. I mean, see for yourself. Not quite. The Last of Us 2 takes on this challenge a little bit differently.
She'll tell you about it when she...
In Manhunt and Arkham, you spend most of that game alone in the dark, so the omniscient villain can keep the tension high and provide story context while you sit there silently. But since then, AI technology has improved, and like Naughty Dog's other titles, you frequently sneak with a friend to chat with. Definitely, this is an ugly world. There is no law other than survival, and there is no justice here, except for the justice you make. So, is Manhunt the most violent game ever? Does it matter? Those words were true in 2003, but of course every year graphics improve and become more lifelike, and if that's how you judge violence, then no, not anymore it isn't. But there will always be a new game offering better blood splatters than what came last year. However, for all the fuss in the player community about a game that asks you to question your character's motivations, or asks you to consider your perspective on a game's story, and not only whether the protagonist will reach their goal, but whether they should.
We let you both live. And you wasted it!
Manhunt proved you could do all that without scolding your audience for playing the game that you sold them. You could shock players into asking themselves why they did something without browbeating them for it, rather than holding the player's hand and dragging them towards a conclusion they may not agree with. The developers of Manhunt succeeded by not holding a player's hand, but by letting go, and letting players judge their own actions for themselves. Even if you do one thing really well, your game may never get another sequel. But what made Manhunt work fits so well into the stealth sections of larger action titles for years to come, where their dev teams iterated on Manhunt's core ideas with deeper systems and emergent gameplay, proving that even if your game fades into history, if you made enough of an impression, your ideas could live forever.
Remember, as far as the world's concerned, you're dead already. Don't hold back. It's them or you.